start recording it. Okay, so the doc that is in the chat here is what I'll be sharing. And this is really kind of fundamental to the work, how we're going to track the work that we're doing together. So for those of you who were involved in March last year, this might look familiar to you. This kind of comes, for some people know my background prior to founding Income Movement. I had a product design firm that I founded in Portland, Oregon, and we did a lot of digital product design. And this is really in many ways kind of born out of my experience in kind of the world of technology and working with complex, diverse teams. Diverse from experience and bringing everybody together. So this is our kind of master 2020 National Basic Income March project management doc. Now this is you'll see that as we go through this is a lot of what's on here on this specific doc are the things that Income Movement is committed to helping deliver to you guys, to helping create, so that you guys don't have to do everything on your own. So, so the way to just kind of understand this document from a high level is at the top, at the first tab here is the schedule itself. And this schedule does go from basically this week, all the way through into the week of the event itself, which is the 19th. Saturday, September 19th is the day of the march. And then a week after for us to do some kind of post-mortem reflections and stuff like that. We probably will actually go another week or two after. But for now, this is kind of the primary timeline that we're going to be working on. We've got the dates along the top. On the left is actually tasks. I'm going to change this to say tasks. So these are the primary kind of outputs that we will be working on internally, but some of the things that we might add into here are things that you guys might want to own and share with the larger team. So this list of tasks is going to grow from week to week. But from our perspective, there's kind of two key important things. Anytime a task gets added to the list, we need to, before it's really kind of officially a task, we need to add an owner to it and a due date to it. Now, the owner, both of these things may be a little bit flexible, but in order for us to actually just put a stake in the ground, from our perspective, we need to do these two steps. And so, and you can see there's a few things here that don't have names on them. And those are things that hopefully when we leave today, we'll know who wants to own some of these things. And if we don't, we may internally, Income Movement might, in some of our internal staff meetings, have some conversations about who on our own internal staff might pick up some of these things. But as we go through, you'll see that there's kind of the overall schedule. The second tab is the team contact list. This is a place for everybody here to go ahead and put in their contact information. And that way, and you can do your email and your phone number or just your email, but that way everybody that's on these calls can reach each other if they need to. Often what will happen in these conversations is somebody might say something like, oh, I've been working on this thing in Atlanta and I'm realizing X, Y, or Z needs to happen. And then a week later, somebody else has the exact same thing pop up and they're like, oh my gosh, how do I get a hold of Liz? And they can come here and you can reach out. So people are doing exactly what they should be doing, which is adding their names and their contact info. So go ahead and take a second to do that. And for the role, you can basically, are you the host of it, like the primary on it, or are you kind of part of a team? Those kinds of things. Okay.
I kind of put my thing in there as HFM board contact. I don't know if that kind of fits, but I'm kind of not just doing something for a particular location.
That makes sense. Okay, cool. So, and then we'll also have a resources tab here. A lot of these resources are going to just be built into our schedule and task timeline, but we'll also just put them here as a really quick way, as a quick reference. And if whoever it is that creates that thing will include a description here, because that level of kind of granularity and details probably won't be here on the schedule. I'm just going to make this schedule. Okay, so a couple of the really important things that are here. So we are in a minute going to go down this list and just talk about all of these things, but there's also two other important documents. At the top, there is the notes doc that and for some reason it really looks all wonky. Let me put it like this. There we go. So, so the meeting notes are here. This is the place that we will capture anything that happens in these meetings. If somebody like Liz or Kimberly, if one of you guys could own doing the meeting notes for this, that would be amazing. And I'll go in and kind of organize them after. Somebody just say that they would do it, and I didn't see it.
One of us, it will get done.
Thank you. Okay, cool. So each meeting will have somebody taking the notes, and then myself or somebody else who's kind of owning the meeting will go through and just make sure that they're organized and easy to access. The most important things that are going to be here are the action items. That's stuff that came out of the meeting that are tasks or things that need to get addressed for the next meeting. Those are things like somebody needs to do a little bit of research and come back with an answer, or those kinds of things that don't maybe make sense to have as a specific task. It's also a place for me afterwards to go and if we didn't end up in real time adding a task to this list, I can go over there and pull them in and think about, like, you know, what does that look like? So there's also, you can see that the very first thing that is on this list is the Basic Income March Project Management Doc template. And this is, I was the owner of this. It was due today, and it's done. And what I've gone ahead and done is just made this task an actual link to the item so that people can just, from here, go ahead and access it. And then the design of this, or the intention behind this, is really in some ways to kind of take that, what we're going to be using as a project management document for the whole March, and give you a version of it for you to use for your own cities. So this is a template that you can go ahead and duplicate, you know, make a copy of it up under File. You can make a copy and then name it and move it to wherever you want to move it, into your own personal drive or what have you, and then use it as the template for your own organizing. This specific one is based on New York City's last year. I wanted to put enough meat in here. That you guys can see the level of granularity that you might end up needing to get into for your own city. But also some of the really important components that as you get closer and closer that you'll probably need to think about. And these are all about just things that we've already done. So if you want, you don't have to reinvent the wheel if you don't want to. Obviously, take what you want to take and leave what you want to leave. There's no kind of requirements to this. This is more just to make it as easy as possible for you guys. So similar to, so what are here right now are all the tasks that we had to do for New York City. And so, you know, things like, what are the city organizer meetings? How often do we want to get together? And it may be like every other week for a while, but then as it gets closer and closer to the day of, you might start meeting much more regularly, but getting those on the calendar as early as possible so people know what they're committing to as far as those kinds of timelines. Speakers, if your event's going to have speakers, some of those steps, coming up with the day of the event logistics plans, flyers if you want to do flyers specifically for your event, those kinds of things. So this is just kind of a flavor of the kinds of things that you might end up doing for your own city. Of course, a team, just like we have on our own larger project document. But then there's a couple of bits here that can be very useful as you start to really get into the planning stages of your event day of. So this is an example of what an itinerary might look like for your event. And it really depends on what kind of event you're choosing to do. And we'll spend a couple minutes on that today, the different types that you might have. This was specifically for the March. And so we gave a certain amount of time for people to gather and had kind of musical performance as part of that. And then really, as we moved into the event, we knew we wanted to have a couple of speakers at the front before we actually marched. We needed to do some march procedures and kind of establish like what is it that we're doing and who's here to help us, and all of those kinds of things. And then the call and response, hashtags, all of the things that you do when you're about to move a large group of people together in some kind of structure. Whether you're doing a car parade, whether you're doing a bike parade, whether you're doing some other form of protest or some other type of event, having a place where you can kind of help get everybody on the same page. And with social distancing, that might be a huge Walmart parking lot and everybody's just kind of standing around, but some way to just help people understand, like, this is what we're going to do, here's how we're going to do it, and okay, now let's do it. It has, from our experience, been pretty critical. And then the march itself, and then what happens after. We had several speakers after the fact. The MC kind of pulled people together, and then we had speakers. Now, this might look very different this year because of COVID. And so we're going to talk about that in just a minute, what alternatives to a classic march might look like. And that might, that might really change what the overall kind of timeline of the event itself looks like and the components that you need to be thinking about. And then the last tab here is the day of, kind of real and kind of the very, very minutia type of tasks that we need, but also how many volunteers we needed to help us do those things. So we had to get permits, who's going to do that, canvassing the march beforehand, like who's going to be putting up flyers, and identifying how many people we knew we needed ahead of time and what dates those were going to be, etc., so that we could just make sure. We have canvas here on the 5th, but then we also had canvassing on the 13th, the next week. And so every time we needed somebody to canvas, we wanted to designate, like, we need another group to canvas, rather than just having it be kind of loosey-goosey. Getting to this level of granularity, actually, and having people sign up, having your team sign up, made it really clear, like, what are people committing to? And then you could very quickly start to see where your gaps were. And this kind of structure is something that will allow you to also, in these meetings, when we get together, when all of the organizers across the country get together to kind of compare notes and see how things are going, if you find yourself coming up against not having enough volunteers to help with certain things, there may be ways for us to help support that. There's lots of different kind of ways that this kind of clarity can help us make sure that you're getting the coverage that you need. So this is here as just examples for you guys to make, kind of use as you will. But all of this, like I said at the beginning, all of this stems from everybody on this call's 2020 National Basic Income March doc. So you can find that template that I just shared here. You can find the notes doc here. And as we move forward, this really is going to become the Bible of what we're doing. You'll have your own kind of specific city documents and things, but this is an opportunity for you to find all of the tools and all the assets that we kind of create over time in one central location. Any kind of thoughts and questions in general around this before we start to get into some of the details? Okay, cool. So let's go down this list a little bit. I guess there's kind of two things. One, from a resources perspective, I want to just go to the website real quick and talk you through a little bit of what's here so that you guys can feel comfortable around kind of not only what's here right now, but how this might grow over time. So this is the Basic Income March website. Last year, as the first year, we really had a very manual experience around this. When people from different cities wanted to start a project, we would literally just send an email to our admin email address and say like, hey, I'm in Orlando and I want to organize a march. And then we added that name to a list, and then we had everybody do everything through Facebook event pages because we were just so kind of down and dirty and trying to get stuff out the door that seemed like the easiest mechanism for kind of bringing communities together around their events. But this year we're using the Action Network as a tool, and there's a lot of reasons for this, and we'll get into that in just a minute. So what that means is you and everybody, when they decide that they want to understand like where are events happening, I want to attend event or I want to see like where things are at, they click on a link and they come to, I might have to resize this because the first time sometimes the map doesn't show up. There we go. So this event map will grow over time. Every time somebody actually signs up to host an event, the moment that they decide to host an event and fill out a form that they are going to do that, a pin will drop on this map. So there's no longer any bottlenecking on our side to try to get new things put onto a map. There's no need for us to, at Income Movement, to make sure that you have all of your kind of ducks in a row. The system really helps do that. So what I'd really love for everybody to do is to, over the next week, is to get a pin on this map if you want to host an event. And I see that there's quite a few events in the US on here already, and some of you guys who are on here said that you were from these locations, so I'm assuming that some of these are you guys hosting already. We are, like last year, this is a global event. We do anticipate having a pretty significant international showing as well. We're doing all of our international planning meetings separate from the ones in the United States, mostly just from a logistics perspective. It's most of the people are in Europe or Africa and Asia, and so just trying to find a time that works for everybody to meet logistically is difficult. So those meetings will happen at like 4 or 5 in the morning our time, so that it's working and it's the right kind of time frame for them. So I didn't want to subject all of you guys to that. There's also, with COVID this year, there's a lot of each country is going to have its own kind of standards around how open things are, what social distancing looks like, etc. And what we've been hearing from people in Europe is that they feel much more comfortable doing large crowd events because of the state of things in their countries. And so we also anticipate that there's probably going to be some significant differences in the events themselves. And so to just help streamline that, having separate meetings is kind of what we landed on. If any of you guys want to be in the meetings with the international team, happy to invite you guys or add you to it. So just let us know. But so you'll start to see more and more pins kind of across the globe land on here. But so I wanted to just walk you guys through real briefly what it means to actually host something and some really key components of this, or kind of things you need to do to make sure that you get added into this, basically that a pin drops for your event. So to set up an event, you want to come to this website, to this specific web page. So if you go to the Basic Income March website and you click attend an event, or really almost anything here that has, you know, find an event near you, they're all going to take you to the same website. And from there, you want to say, click to host, and you're going to be immediately brought to a form and a little informational that kind of drops over the form. So this is a bunch of guidelines and kind of, here's how you do it. Basically everything that I'm going to say in this meeting. But I'm just going to walk you through the most important things that like you got to do. And some of them are very clearly outlined here. But the moment you say, okay, this goes away. So if you need to do a screenshot of this so that you have all the information, you can. It's pretty straightforward, but in case you feel like you're going to need it, there's ways to kind of bring this back up. So the first most important thing is that you're going to have to create an account in Action Network. This is your own unique account, like a Facebook account or whatever, that is not associated with Income Movement. So you're just going to have your own account in Action Network. And you might see that like, whoa, there's a whole bunch of other organizations that I am aligned with that use Action Network, and you can actually use this to participate in lots of other activities if you want to. But that's your own personal account with your own password that we don't have anything to do with. Once you've done that and you come back to this page and you say, I want to click to host, then you will, there we go. You'll come here and you'll start to fill out the form. And the form is super straightforward from a basic information perspective. The title of your event, ideally it's your city's name and then Basic Income March, so that it's really clear the location of your event. Start date and time. We're trying to do all of these on September 19th. If something significant is happening in your city where that doesn't seem like it's going to work and you need to do Sunday, ideally it happens on that weekend. We've intentionally chosen this weekend because it's the last weekend of the Basic Income Week, which is an international event that's been happening, I think, for 11 or 12 years. That's actually very big abroad. It's been around for quite a while. BIEN and a couple of other organizations host that, and so this is kind of the culminating event at the end of Basic Income Week. So please do schedule your events for ideally the 19th or the 20th. The location name, you know, this is where your event is going to start. You can go in and edit this at any time. And so you can put in just a placeholder location if you're not sure, if you need to do a little bit of research in your city. But getting your event in here means that people are going to be able to start signing up. You're going to start to understand the size of your crowd. You're going to start to understand kind of what's happening. And that can influence some decisions around, you know, location or start time or what have you. So getting something in here, even if it's placeholder, you can let them know it's placeholder. There's actually information here that people will see when they first go to sign up and attend your event. You can literally just say in here, like, this is placeholder, it'll be somewhere downtown, but I'm still looking into logistics, so that people are aware of that. But it'll allow you to get that pin on the map and start to have people sign up for your events. And then the second, or really the most important thing on here, is at the bottom, this sponsored by drop down. And this is where if you don't do this step, your pin won't actually drop on our map. It'll just it'll drop on, I don't really actually know where it drops. I think it just drops on your own personal map that is somewhere out in the ether. So when you click on income movement, you might have to type in income movement here. It might not naturally fill in, autofill. But if you type in income movement, or if it's there as part of the drop down, that's the last piece before you say save and go to next step. And it's the most important piece. A lot of people, when they first sign up, they don't do that piece. And then they go back to the map and they're like, oh my God, what happened to my event? Where is it? And sometimes it can be a little bit more labor intensive to try to find this component again once you've already saved and saved your event. So definitely take care of that piece. There's some other things you can do here. You know, ideally you want to allow attendees to bring guests, because this will help you understand how many people are actually coming. It makes it so that everybody doesn't, you know, like a wife and a husband don't need to fill this out in order for you to understand that 2 people are coming. And there's other components here that you can kind of play around with. So once you have that done, like I said, your event will be on the map, and your event will then basically be able to take advantage of all of the things that income movement is going to be doing to help promote and push this. So, which will take us back to the basic income March schedule, our kind of project doc that we have. So what we're going to do, once you've signed up, that means you're in the system, and we're going to have all of your contact information to be able to send you guys directly emails if there's any important changes or updates. Email will be our primary tool to be able to communicate really critical and important things. But obviously we want to have these meetings weekly, and so that people can just check in and see the progress on things, where we can share some of the latest things that we've created to help you guys in whatever way we can. And so, and then we also, like we said in the email that we sent out last week for this, we have a channel on our own Slack, basic or income movement Slack, that will be a place that people can communicate if they're kind of struggling, or if they have questions, or what have you. Any thoughts or questions about what we just reviewed? Okay. The one thing that I want to mention here in the basic income.
Hey,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, just a question. So this document, the document that has the spreadsheet, that document, yes. If people, do people need to copy it right now and make sure that they have it, because this is the only way that they're going to be able to get it?
We'll post this.
Like,
We'll post this
Yeah.
up in the Slack link, in the Slack channel. So this is now kind of and it'll be basically up. We'll pin it, but we'll also just put it up in the description of our Slack channel. And we're happy. We'll also send we'll send a follow-up email with the link to the notes and the link to this and stuff to everybody who signed up to be part of the March, so that our full volunteer team list has it as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to just point out, because this is probably top of mind for everybody as you start to think about, like, what kind of event are we actually talking about here? When you go under the Get Involved page on the website, there's a variety of, and you kind of scroll down, there's a list of different types of events that you could potentially host. This is not an exhaustive list, but it starts to get at a variety of types of things that you might have, that you might decide to host. I think the most important thing around this is we're gonna have a few key kind of flagship events that we're hoping will be really large. but not everybody's events are going to be that, and that's absolutely okay. I think last year we had 30 events across the globe, and the size of those events ranged from, 10 people to 1,000 people. And so we've gone through a lot of information here and a lot of kind of supporting tools and spreadsheets and all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's really important for you guys to know that if you live in a town where there's not a big basic income community, and you're going to be really stoked if 25 or 30 people come out and support your event, that is absolutely success. And there's types of events that you can plan that can help you feel like you have a really kind of robust event, and also that is kind of appropriate for your size of crowd. So I want to just level set that really clearly, that that having 10 to 15 people stand out on street corners and hold up signs can be an incredibly effective way to communicate to your community that you support basic income, for them to start to engage with the idea, and that ultimately is a baseline, so that the following year you can start to see, like, how is this growing in your community over time. We will be, as soon as you get that pin on the map, Income Movement has a pretty significant list, and we work with Humanity First Movement and Humanity Forward and BIEN and US Big, and a lot of different basic income organizations that have membership lists as well. And we'll be promoting this through them, and they'll be helping promote these things across social media. We'll have marketing associated, etc. So we do anticipate being able to help you guys get more activity and involvement in your communities, and just make sure anybody who is in your, are in your cities, know that there's something planned. It's all the more reason why you want to get a pin on that map as quickly as possible, so that every time we're talking about that on a national level, people that may be curious or interested, and they go to the website and they see, like, oh, there's actually something already planned, you can kind of get them into the system as quickly as possible. The other great thing about about Action Network is that when you put a pin on this map and you say that you're a host, you actually get access to everybody who signed up for your event. So you can actually start communicating with them pretty quickly if you want to. You can be sending them reminders. You can be asking them to promote the event within their own communities, on their social media platforms, whatever it is. So you can actually start doing some of the kind of grassroots building for your organization with the people who have already opted in really quickly. And that often we find is one of the most fruitful ways that we can that you can just organically start to grow your event. But so we have a basic income march or rally, the more kind of standard form. This is what we did in a lot of cities last year. We do anticipate that probably for this year, certainly in the United States, if there's something that looks like a march, it's probably going to take a different format. So the idea of a car or bike parade is certainly an option. We've been doing we've had a few different car parades that we've helped host and organize over the last couple of months as part of our congressional pressure action plan that we've been kind of executing to get Congress to support an emergency basic income as part of the next stimulus. And so we've learned a lot of really great things from those experiences, and we think that there can be a lot of success in this model for sure. There's also things like street corner protests. Now these could be for if you only have a handful of people, up to like really many hundreds, as an effective way. It's really kind of an inversion of a parade, in the sense that if you think of most parades have people on the streets that are kind of standing and observing and clapping and being part of it. Here the people that are on the sides of the street are actually the ones that are doing the protest. So if you think about it as street corner protests, you could map out a square mile of a city and say, okay, all of our protesters, we're going to go and have one protester, or people from the same household that are already together and spreading germs together. They can be on individual corners across that entire it's 1 square mile of downtown. This is really cool because, one, it allows you to communicate with cars that are going by as well as pedestrians. It's something that allows people to interact with your ideas and what's happening on signs over a long period of time. So they're more likely to really actually have some of that message sink in. And of course, it allows us to practice social distancing as well. So this is a really cool option. It also just might look, there might be variations of something like this that makes sense for your town or for where you are in your own kind of level of comfort as an organizer around this. But I do want to emphasize that the role of this march or this event is to have public social protest. So this is not, we've been doing a lot of things online, and that's a really important component, absolutely. But when we think about the kind of essence or the philosophy behind the Basic Income March, this is an opportunity for us to really establish with our own community and with the leadership within our communities the importance of and the kind of political will of the people around the idea of basic income. So, and publicly making that public stand is a really important way to help demonstrate that and to help people understand the level of commitment that we have to this idea. So I would say that, we're going to have a lot of virtual and digital experiences leading up to and supporting this event. Whether it's letter writing campaigns or cool kind of videos and interactive videos or online events, but we also want to make sure that there's something happening physically in communities related to basic income. It's an opportunity to get press engaged. It's an opportunity to get leadership engaged, whether it's at the city level all the way up to Congress, to the federal level, and really to help your community understand that there's people out in this community that supports a new way of thinking about our economy, and really putting kind of humans at the center of that. So there's also this idea of crowdsourced art installations, and this is something that that we can spend a little bit more time on next week. We'll pull together like a 2-pager that has a little bit more details around what these things could look like. These could be crowdsourced art installations, so it could be that people tell their stories about why they think UBI is so important, or how they or their family members would benefit from a UBI, and then there may be ways for you to be able to integrate that into a art installation that actually has staying power. So it could be a mural, it could be a street mural like these, it could be a mural on the side of a wall, it could be, we've talked about these ideas of what we call income trees, which are like people being able to write down their what they would do with the basic income and tie that tag to a tree. And so you can kind of see over time, there's a little information at the bottom of the tree about what these tags are and what they represent. It grows over time, and people know every single one of those tags represents an individual in their community who values basic income, and you can actually read those very kind of specific individual stories. So something kind of like the, my UBI story on Twitter, bringing that into the real world as a physical leave behind that people can then, when they're on their walks in their communities, they can look at it and engage with it and start to understand what basic income is all about. So there's a pretty wide variety of things here. We've done a lot of additional brainstorming around this, and I think that that we're going to want to carve out a little bit of time next week and the following week, the week after that, in our meetings to give some opportunities for really brainstorming around this. So we'll have a little bit more kind of richer resources for you guys, some examples so you can see what things look like. And then we can do some additional brainstorming so that we have a really great list of options for people as they start to think about what makes sense in their communities. Any thoughts or questions around that?
No, pretty well explained.
Okay, cool. So I want to just very briefly, we want to make sure that we end right at the top of the hour, just be very respectful of everyone's time. But I also want to make sure that you guys have a sense of some of the things that Income Movement is committed to providing to help you guys be as successful as you can and want to be in your events. So Income Movement will be creating branded signage for events, and we're going to really try to make sure that those signs can work across a variety of events, whether it's street corner protesting, whether it's a bike parade, whether it's a car parade. Like, how can we make sure that the things that we're providing can work in all of those different contexts? But also, how can we make sure that things are sized right so that people can easily print stuff off their home if they want to? And how can we make sure that the organizers, like you guys, can access high quality signage without having to pay for it out of pocket? So some of what we're going to be doing in these meetings is helping share some of the assets that we're creating, and then understand what parts of those, or which of those assets you guys would like to have, and so that we can set up and find locations for local printers or what have you that we can send those to, and then Income Movement can actually cover the costs for printing of those kinds of things, because we know it can become pretty cost prohibitive to have cool signs at events when you have to pay out of pocket. So we'll be creating 2020 Basic Income March, kind of a branded signage, that kind of consistent word mark of Basic Income March with whatever the kind of themes are for this year. We'll also have a social media and marketing plan for you guys. So this will be something that you'll know when we're going to be pushing things significantly, so that you can align with that if you want to in your own city. And those are things that, when it comes to social media assets and things like that, we'll be providing cool infographics or what have you that you can just pull from a folder and post up on Facebook or whatever your kind of tools of communication are on social media, so that you're not having to reinvent that wheel. At the same time, we know that each city kind of often has their own flavor of unique assets that they like to create. So the 3 cities that we anticipate as being kind of the flagship cities, New York, DC, and LA, we know that those teams are probably going to want to create some of their own unique assets, and we totally, can give a little bit of a starting point for that. And then city teams can kind of just go crazy with it. But we want to make sure that we share some of those with you guys so that you can use them as inspiration as well. We'll have a press release and we'll share that with you. So if you want to do some of that, we'll also have a doc that helps with like press outreach and protocol, like how do you actually engage with press, and what are our best practices that we've seen over time to kind of get people engaged, get coverage. But we'll also, of course, provide you with talking points so that you don't have to feel uncomfortable. If a journalist comes down and wants to interview you or talk with you, that you can have that confidence of understanding like what's happening globally and nationally. What are the things that you want to talk about that are part of this larger movement, and then you can kind of add to that for your own specific city. And then the last piece, and then we'll kind of wrap up, but we are anticipating, because of this year's kind of COVID social distancing requirements, we're thinking that this year is going to be unique in that we're going to want to have a Friday program where we have significant speakers, national speakers, come together and actually do, if some of you guys participated in the Poor People's Campaign digital march this year on June 20th, they had a really great program for about an hour and a half. There was a lot of kind of mostly it was individuals telling their stories what it means to be living in our current economy for a large percentage of our population. But we know that we're going to probably want to have, not all of these events can actually function in a normal way, a quote unquote normal way for a march or a rally where you get to have speakers and a stage. And so but we still want to have an opportunity for some of the key leaders within the basic income community to be able to come together and share some of that. So Andrew or Scott Sandins or Andy Stern or Mayor Tubbs, there's a lot happening right now in basic income. Charles Booker, there's so many like amazing leaders that are part of this movement. How can we make sure that they have an opportunity to talk with people, to share, and for people to get kind of inspired and excited? So we do anticipate being able to provide that program the night before that's kind of getting everybody excited and amped up so that the next day they can kind of go out and do their kind of individual work in cities. So we'll have more on that next week when we're thinking of, when we do some time on the types of events that people might want to hold. We'll also do a little bit of brainstorming specifically around this Friday global event and how do we, what are the most important things from everybody's perspective that we want to make sure is included in there. Okay, we're 1 minute over, but I want to just make sure if there's any immediate questions that you guys need to make sure are covered. Okay, this was a lot to cover. This is our kind of first real big kickoff. I really appreciate all of you taking this in stride because I know I kind of just tossed a lot on you, but definitely I think this week one of the more important things to do is to get that pin on the map if you haven't already, so that you're kind of in the system, and then let other people know, either in your own, if you already have some people on your team that you think are going to want to be part of what's happening in your city, feel free to invite them to some of these conversations so that they can just start to get in the swing of things, get a little bit of their own, kind of the team's information. So feel free to share this as it makes sense, this meeting. And we'll send out a reminder next week with an agenda so everybody knows what it is that's going to be happening. We do really strongly recommend that people get into our Slack system. That'll be in the email in case some of you aren't on our Slack, and at least attend some of these meetings on a regular kind of cadence so that you always have the latest and greatest, because there may be some important shifts that happen over the next few weeks as we start to plan in detail some of these things. So definitely stay in touch, and we'll do as much as we can to help with that communication via email, via Slack, all of that lovely stuff. Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, you guys. Have a wonderful, lovely week, and we'll see you again very soon. And in the meantime, if you have questions or anything that you need, just reach out to us via email or via Slack, and we'll get you taken care of.
Thanks.
Stacey.
Thank you.
Thanks, you
Have a
guys.
great night.
Thank you.
Take care.